Welcome everyone, Costin here on Serious Gaming with a new campaign planning video for Total War Rome 2. The mighty Seleucid Empire. Creative Assembly made an announcement yesterday revealing that they would release the Seleucid Empire as part of a free DLC for Total War Rome 2 in October. They also announced a paid DLC which would feature some Scythian factions, though they haven't provided much in the way of information besides the free factions that apparently they're going to include in that DLC. Anyway, the Seleucid Empire, it's a multicultural society combining all the various cultures that encompass the regions it controls, directly or indirectly. So you have Persian culture, you have potentially Indian culture, Arab culture, and of course Greek culture. Because the Seleucid Empire was formed by a Greek, one of Alexander the Great's generals, Seleucus. Now, the game starts in 272 BC, so the empire is led by Seleucus' son, Antiochus I, or Antiochus the Savior, so named because he had defeated Gauls who had invaded Anatolia and saved the empire, as it were. The Gauls were actually a problem for the Greeks, the Thracians, and actually the entire region at that point, because they had invaded that particular region of Greeks and Anatolia and Thrace during that time, just a few years before the game begins. Anyway, you start in control over a very diverse empire in both its people and its armies. Now, the Seleucids apparently have very little tolerance for slavery. That's their negative trait. So that means you will not be able to enslave as many people as other factions can before having a public happiness issue. The way I see slavery working in Total War Rome 2, based on the information we have, is that you can enslave people, but that if you enslave too many people, you will have a public order issue. With the Seleucids, that issue will arise faster because the Seleucids don't have a tolerance for slavery. It's their negative trait. However, because of their multicultural society, they have less public order issues from having foreign cultures in their territories. I think this also means that when you conquer an enemy settlement of a different culture than yours, you will face less cultural resistance to your occupation. Also, as a successor kingdom, based on the information in the Macedonian playthrough by Creative Assembly, by Jack Lusted, the successor kingdoms, every single one of them, Macedon, Egypt, and Seleucids, they faced less resistance to foreign occupation. This is information from the Macedonian playthrough. Check it out, it has quite a few bits of useful information in regards to Total War Rome 2. Quite useful there. So it's easier for you to conquer enemy regions because you face less resistance to your occupation of enemy territories. So that means you can expand very quickly, much quicker than other factions can, which is a very big advantage. Personally, I'm a rush player. I like to rush as fast as I can. I don't like to turtle. I don't like to build up. I want to take my armies from the first turn and move to an enemy territory and take it out in that first turn, if I have the possibility to do so. If not, in 2 turns. Anyway, the Seleucid Empire has a very diverse army, as are its people. They have war elephants, they have cataphracts, the best cavalry unit in the entire game. They have phalangites, they have hoplites, they have Persian and Arab light infantry units, slingers, archers, horse archers. They have every single one of these units. The only thing that seems to be lacking with the Seleucid army is the fact that they don't appear to have good sword units. Considering all the advantages they have otherwise, however, that's not a big problem as I see it. So you have control over a very strong, diverse, flexible army, and you should use that. An army with phalangites, war elephants, hoplites, horse archers, cataphracts, so on. That's an army which can destroy anything that stands in its path if you play your cards correctly. Unfortunately for the Seleucids, however, they didn't have many good military leaders, and even those that they did have faced many defeats against the Egyptians, the Romans, and so on. In fact, as the Seleucids, your greatest foe will be Egypt, at least at the beginning of the game. Anyway, let's talk about territories. You control Syria, which means Antioch, Tyrus, Palmyra, and Duroc. Antioch being the provincial capital. You also have Tarsus, the provincial capital of Cilicia, as well as the settlement of Edessa in the Mesopotamia province. You have 7 client states: Sardis, Media, Persia, Parphawa, Sagartia, Drangiana, and Arya. This does mean you will get a lot of money in the first few turns of the game. However, this is in itself not necessarily a strength, because your empire is very fractured and many of these client states will very likely leave your empire. There are only 3, though maybe 2 or 3 client states that I would count under loyalty: Sardis, Media, and potentially Persia, though I'm not entirely certain whether or not they would stay in the Seleucid Empire. The rest, the ones to the far east of Parphawa, Sagartia, Arya, and Drangiana, I would not count on their loyalty. The first thing I would do when starting the game, the very first thing, once the intro cinematic is over, order Parphawa, Arya, Sagartia, and Drangiana, or at least one of them, to destroy Parthia. That's the first thing I would do. I think Parphawa and Arya would especially welcome the chance to destroy Parthia. Perhaps offer them a gift of gold in the second turn, if not the first turn, if you have enough gold to spare, to wipe out Parthia. That's the first thing you want to do. Eliminate that major faction and eliminate that threat to the eastern part of your empire. It doesn't matter if these client states secede from your empire, because these client states are never going to be able to match the power Parthia had in terms of armies. Parthia being a major faction, thus I assume, of course, they have bonuses which minor factions don't, so they're a bigger threat. Even if they only control one territory, eliminate them as fast as possible. Don't let them grow as a threat. Basic military strategy: eliminate a threat before it becomes too great. Anyway, that's the first thing I would do, assuming your client states are willing to listen to your orders. If not, you have a problem, and that Parthia will grow as power. You shouldn't march an army through all those client states' territory to deal with Parthia yourself. Or you might be able to do so if you're so inclined, though I would consider it a waste of time at the beginning of the game, because there are bigger threats to deal with as well. There's Egypt to the south. You recently lost the war. Historically, the Seleucid Empire recently had lost the war against the Ptolemies of Egypt. The Seleucid Empire being led by Antiochus I, also known as Antiochus the Savior, for saving Anatolia from the Gauls who had invaded it. Yeah, the Gauls had actually invaded Macedonia, Greeks, Thrace, and Anatolia. They had managed to make their way to Anatolia, and they were defeated in Anatolia by Antiochus I, Antiochus the Savior. Anyway, he's the son of Seleucus, the founder of the empire, and he's leading a very fractured, unstable empire, which recently, as I said, suffered the defeat against Egypt, and who will face a lot of problems back at home. In fact, his reign began with a revolt in Egypt, which he did crush, but he did abandon his father's expansionist plans against Macedonia and Thrace. In fact, his father wanted to take control over the entirety of Greece before he was killed, well, assassinated. Anyway, what I do is, the first thing I do is take all my armies and march in Arabia Magna. Don't go to war against Egypt at the very beginning. The reason behind this is that, well, yes, you can take your armies from the very first turn and march on Egypt if you so desire. What I'd recommend is let Egypt send its troops against Libya. The reason behind that is because if Egypt sends their army against Cyrenaica, with which they started war with, then their eastern front will be devoid of defenders, or it will, or you'll face very little in the way of defenders when you do invade Egypt. So wait a few turns, let Egypt send its armies against Cyrenaica, then invade. In the meantime, take control over Arabia Magna and Arabia Felix, then invade Egypt. March on Jerusalem, march on Petra, take control over the 2 settlements they control in the Nabatea province. Don't go to war against the Nabatea faction unless you're forced to. Instead, march all the way to Alexandria, take out Alexandria, and then you're probably going to have to face, if you manage to take Alexandria before facing the might of the Egyptian armies, then you're going to have to face them in Alexandria itself. Though what likely will happen is that Egypt will turn its army around and you will have to face them before reaching Alexandria. Probably next to Giza. Anyway, in the shadow of the Great Pyramids, as Napoleon fought so many centuries after this game takes place. Once Egypt is eliminated, and if you play your cards right, it shouldn't be that difficult to eliminate it. I mean, you do have a lot of money coming in from these client states, even if by this time I expect at least one or two of them to leave leave the Seleucid Empire, reject your protection, and possibly declare war on you. I'm not entirely certain if a client state leaves your empire, they'll declare war on you. I'm not sure if that's automatic, though it might be. I'm not entirely certain. Anyway, though when dealing with Egypt, you'll also have to deal with Cyprus, which controls 2/3 of the Cilicia province. So you'll have to send some armies and as well as your fleet to deal with Cyprus. Once Cyprus is dealt with, your fleet is free to move against Egypt, help your ground forces there out. You can also move your army in the Nile as well and strike a heavy blow against Egypt. Anyway, once Egypt is eliminated, leave one or two armies or one entire stack of troops to take control over the Libya province. Maybe that's overkill, but it's best to be thorough. Eliminate Cyrenaica. Meanwhile, your other armies should march north, take out Nabatea at this point, and you'll be in control over the Egyptus province as well as the Nabatea province, besides Arabia Magna and Arabia Felix. You'll gain control over Libya, and then once you have Libya, don't march further west. You don't want to piss off Carthage. In fact, you should sign a non-aggression pact with Carthage. That would be the best way of handling that, so that you don't end up in a war with them. Also sign a non-aggression pact with the Lebue as well, and then move your army from Libya into just south of Egyptus province and take the three factions that are in the province south of Egyptus. Take them out, take control over that entire area. You'll have a lot of money coming in and you'll have a lot of troops at this point. To the north, you should strike an alliance with either Pontus or Armenia. One of them should be receptive to such an alliance. Don't make an alliance with the two of them, though you should at the very least make a non-aggression pact with both of them. Make an alliance with one of them, however, to counteract the effects of the efforts of the other. So, if you make an alliance with Armenia, then Pontus can declare war on you without having to face Armenia as well, hopefully. Unless Armenia decides that your alliance with them is meaningless. That's what I do. Make an alliance with either Armenia or Pontus. Preferably Armenia because they're a stronger faction. Once Egypt and Cyprus are eliminated and you've got control over this entire region, then you have options. You can take out Media Atropatene, you can march northwest, take out Pergamon, march into Greece itself, reunify Alexander's empire, take control over Macedonia and Greece, or Macedonia and Hellas, and potentially Thrace as well. Or you can march east, bring the client states, which will abandon you, very likely at this stage, unless you keep them happy. Personally, I try and keep them happy by giving them a sum of money each turn. So, say you get 1,000 gold from each of them, you get 1,000 gold from, say, Parfa, you give them back 500 of that gold each turn. You set a tribute to this faction. Why? Because you want to keep them in your empire, because it's advantageous to you. Even if you're going to end up in wars against many of the factions, especially in the east, Bactria, Arachosia, the High, and so on. Anyway, at this point, once Egypt is eliminated, you can either move west or you can move east. It's up to you. Or you can try your luck against Pontus and Armenia, wipe one or both of them out. Depends on what you want. Yeah. So you can expand north, you can expand northwest, or you can expand northeast. Northeast would mean going through Parthia, into Scythia, Ponto-Caspia, then taking Caucasia, then dealing with the factions in Anatolia, Armenia, Galatia, Cappadocia, and so on. And then once you have control over the entirety of the east, you can move against the west. You need to take control over 140 settlements. There are 160 settlements in Rome 2, Total War Rome 2. I counted them. Unless I counted badly, there's 167. There are about, 7 71 or so provincial capitals as well. 71 potential siege battles. And you need to take control over 140 of them, either through direct control or client states or military allies. If you get military alliances with everyone and you have a big enough army, then you can win the campaign that way. You don't need to take control over the entirety of the map yourself. Anyway, Costin here on Serious Gaming, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more.